And today we'll look at verse 6, which is about good friends as opposed to bad friends. But before going on to that, there's just one more thing I want to say about the previous topic, the so-called bad friends. So it can happen that we may have critical, judgmental thoughts, or even anger and aversion towards such people. As you probably know, that's not a helpful thing to do. It's not that we have choice or control over what comes up in our mind, but these kind of thoughts just pop up, probably because of habitual tendencies. There are a few things that I find helpful in dealing with such thoughts. One is what I call the mirror method. The idea is that what we don't like in other people, or what we kind of pushes our buttons in other people, might be things that we have in ourselves that we don't accept and acknowledge and judge. So what I find helpful is when I feel critical or judgmental towards another person, is to ask myself, have I ever done that? Have I ever been like that? And chances are, we can remember. We can remember times when, even if we didn't do something exactly the same as what the other person is doing, but something similar. Or just seeing that we have that tendency, that impulse, that there's a possibility that we could act in the way that the other person is acting. So if you can see that, if you can recognize that they're kind of like a mirror showing you something about yourself, it sort of pulls the rug out from under judgmentalness, because how can we judge somebody else for something that we have ourselves? And then the solution is to come to an attitude of acceptance, which isn't easy. I mean, this could take a long time to get to the point where we can accept that we are like that too, and not hate ourselves or beat ourselves up for being that way, but we're just human beings, unenlightened beings. It's only natural that we have these things. And then acceptance also doesn't mean, oh, well, I'm like that, and I don't need to do anything about it. Acceptance means, yes, I'm like that, but if it is something harmful and destructive, then I want to work on it, and I can work on it. So if we can come to more acceptance and non-judgmentalness towards ourselves, then we'll be less likely to judge others for those same things, and instead have compassion, empathy and compassion for them, which is much more healthy and wholesome. Another thing that's helpful is just remembering impermanence. The person may be like that now, but there's no certainty they'll be like that forever. They probably will change. They definitely will change, according to Buddhism. They're not going to be like that forever. And also helpful to think, how does the Buddha see this person? Does the Buddha have judgmental, critical thoughts towards this person? So try to see the person as the Buddha would see them. So these are just some things I find helpful to counteract criticalness, judgmentalness. Okay, so then the next verse, verse 6, says, when you rely on them, your faults come to an end, and your good qualities grow like the waxing moon. Cherish spiritual teachers even more than your own body. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. So this is mainly talking about spiritual teachers, but we also need spiritual friends, companions, who are also concerned about working on their mind, decreasing the disturbing emotions, increasing the positive qualities. Because in some cases, we can't always be with our spiritual teachers. Sometimes your spiritual teacher might be a high lama, and you only get to see him once a year, or once every couple of years if you're lucky. So, but we probably spend more time with spiritual friends, just other people who are also wanting to follow this path, trying to follow this path, and in their company, associating with them, spending time with them, being influenced by them, we can see that our disturbing emotions like attachment and anger and confusion gradually decrease. And the positive qualities like loving kindness and compassion and patience and wisdom gradually increase. So these are spiritual friends, and we really need to cherish them and try to spend as much time as possible with those people. But mainly this verse is talking about spiritual teachers, which are sometimes called gurus, but that term guru sometimes freaks people out. So maybe spiritual teacher or spiritual mentor. Venerable Chödrön uses that term. And this is a really big topic. Lots of different points, such as why we need to have spiritual teachers, and how to choose a spiritual teacher, what kind of qualities to look for. And then once you do find a spiritual teacher or spiritual teachers, how to relate to them, how to have the most healthy, beneficial relationship with them. And this is on two levels. Mentally, how we think, how we view them with our thoughts, and then more on the level of actions, how we behave towards them. So there's many, many, many details which we don't have time to go into, but I would like to recommend. This is the second volume of, I'm sure you know, of the books that Venerable Chödrön is working on, the Dalai Lama's teachings, and it's called The Foundation of Buddhist Practice. And chapters 4 and 5 in this book cover this topic of spiritual teachers in a more contemporary way, which is very helpful because the traditional Lamrim texts, such as Lamrim Chenmo and Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand and so forth, were composed in Tibet, in the Tibetan context, where 99% of the people were Buddhist, and so many things were just taken for granted. But we in our Western culture don't have this tradition of having gurus or spiritual teachers and relating to them. So it's like there's a lot of questions that come up for us. Also, especially in the recent years, scandals. There's been a number of stories of teachers, Tibetan teachers, who haven't behaved well and have even been quite harmful and abusive to their teachers, to their disciples. So this explanation in the book from His Holiness takes these kind of questions into consideration and answers them. So it answers questions that we commonly have, such as what to do if a spiritual teacher misbehaves. Also, what to do if you happen to disagree with something that one of your teachers says, or if you have difficulty following their advice, and so forth. So I really recommend this book. And one possible source of confusion regarding this topic is that in the traditional Lamrim books, this topic comes right at the beginning. And so that tends to lead to people thinking, I have to have a guru before I can do anything else. That's the very first step on the path, is to find a guru and then start practicing. But we have to remember, I'm sure Venerable Chödrön's told you about this, but the Lamrim texts were not written for beginners. They're not beginners' guides to Buddhism. They were written for practitioners, people who already have a really firm, sound understanding of Buddhism and are convinced that this is what they want to do with their life. They want to just dedicate their life to following the path to enlightenment, and so this is how you proceed. I don't think in Tibet they actually had beginner's guides to Buddhism, because everybody, you learned it from the time you were in your womb, so in your mother's womb. And they didn't have brand new people coming in and saying, okay, what's Buddhism all about? So now we're having, thanks to Venerable Chödrön and other contemporary teachers, we're having the chance to get a more beginner's guides to Buddhism. And so, the advice is we shouldn't rush into making a guru-disciple relationship. And just to read one passage from this book, he says, we must investigate and examine a teacher thoroughly before deciding that he or she will be one of our teachers. Immediately accepting someone as our teacher without proper investigation is unwise. I recommend that people attend Dharma teachings and get to know the person first. At this time, do not regard him or her as your teacher, let alone as a Buddha. Consider the person as a Dharma friend who shares information with you. Observe his or her conduct in daily life and assess their understanding of the teachings as best you can. Ask other students about the teacher's qualities and look at the qualities of those students to see if you want to become like them by following the same teacher. Check if the teacher has a good relationship with his or her teachers. In addition, read Dharma books so that you have a general knowledge of Buddhist tenets and can assess if this person's teachings are correct. So that shows, we don't just immediately get a teacher and then learn Dharma. We have to know Dharma first. What is Dharma all about? We have to determine if this is really what I want to do with my life. And it's on the basis of a good understanding of Dharma that we're in a position where we can determine if a teacher is a suitable teacher, if they have the right qualities, also if they're the right teacher for us. And that's another thing that's not always mentioned in the books, but I've heard this, that even if a teacher is fantastic and they have all these great qualities, but you still have to determine, can I get along with them? Can I be a disciple of that teacher? Is there a personality match or clash with that person? Well, that's another factor to consider. Anyway, and then this verse at the end says that we should cherish teachers even more than our own body. Which might sound a little extreme, and I don't think that means that we shouldn't take care of our body, our health, our life. Of course, we have to. Otherwise, how can we practice the Dharma? We'll be in bed all the time, other people having to take care of us. So, we need to take care of ourselves, our body, our life, and so forth. But I think what it means here is that normally we do have high regard for our body and our life. However, these are impermanent. They're not going to last forever. They're going to come to an end. Whereas our mind is going to continue into the future, life after life after life, eventually up to enlightenment. And spiritual teachers are those who teach us how to take care of our mind, how to practice mental hygiene, and ensure that our minds will go in a positive direction towards more happiness and peace and eventually enlightenment, rather than in a negative direction, more suffering, more confusion, perpetuation of samsara. And that's why teachers are incredibly precious, even more precious, more important than our body. And so it's really important that we remember that and hold them in high esteem, because what they teach us, what they give us, what they do for us is inestimably valuable and beneficial. Okay, thank you.